Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just in case you need to use the restroom, they are located out to the right, so feel free to come and go as we have coffee and breakfast as well. So thanks for coming. I'm Ann Mathias. I'm the Schlegg Brand Director at Allegiant, which is right next door, as well as the Vice Chair for the Hamilton County Advisory Board for United Way. And the Advisory Board is very excited to kick off our first annual informational breakfast, really to talk about not only the needs in Hamilton County, but also learn how we can collaborate with all of Central Indiana, as well as learn more about the new U in the new U strategy with the United Way. So a special thanks to our sponsors, CNO, who has graciously given us this facility. So thanks to them, as well as GoodellNet, which is a small business IT consulting group. So thanks for the food that they provided this morning. And also thanks to all of you who have supported United Way in the past, as well as those who plan to do so in the future. So to kick us off, I'd like to introduce Mark Radican. He is the Chief Operating Officer for Info Dynamics. And Mark is also has been the chair for the Hamilton County Advisory Board. So he knows a lot about United Way and has a knack for really making numbers exciting. So I'll hand it over to Mark.
Thank you, Ann. I hope I can even modestly live up to that challenge of making numbers exciting first thing in the morning. Well, I would reiterate, thank you for all making some time to come out today. I'm Mark Radican. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Info Dynamics. We are a software company located right outside of we're right on the border of Fishers and Carmel, and we do document management software. And as Ann had said, I was reflecting this morning, I've been involved with United Way in some capacity for nearly 25 years, and I would tell you that every time I come to an event, I learn something new, and I'm always humbled by being able to continue to learn and to be able to give back to the community. So thank you so much, and thanks CNO and GoodellNet. Since this is our first meeting of this kind, we thought we would start out with just some facts and data about Hamilton County. I'm an operations guy, so I love indicators, I love numbers, I love statistics. So we're going to go through this, and hopefully it won't be too painful. When we look at the demographic trends in the area, what we are forecasting is that given the current rate of change, Hamilton County will double its size by 2050, roughly 35 years from now. We are the fastest growing county in the state, and if we keep up that pace, we will be the second largest county outside of and taking over Lake and Allen counties. Well, where is that population coming from? I think when people hear Hamilton County, I think there's probably 1 to 2 spots that you tend to think of with Hamilton County. You think of perhaps Carmel, you think of perhaps Fishers, Noblesville. I think everybody has the 1 or 2 areas that they think about. But what we want to show here is that Hamilton County is more about just 1 or 2 communities. Certainly Carmel and Fishers leads a commanding share just in terms of share of where the population exists. But we certainly have Arcadia, Sheridan, and Westfield, of course, is growing. When we look at ethnicity, we are a less diverse community than perhaps we would see in the metro overall. And certainly the median household income is a bit higher than what we would see in the metro overall. The Central Indiana Metro's median household income is around $59,000. And what is interesting is, while we are higher overall, there is a lot of variance within the county. You'll see that there are certainly pockets of affluence and there are pockets of need. And that's a theme I'm going to come back to because, again, that was a key learning as I became involved in Hamilton County that was a real eye-opener to me. There are a number of myths, I would say, when you think about Hamilton County and you think about United Way. And I will confess that some of these were previously held notions that I had. When I was approached to become involved with the Hamilton County Advisory Board several years ago, the first thing I said is, Hamilton County, is there a need up here? And as I talk to people, that is a commonly held perception. And I'm going to show you some data this morning to suggest that while we have pretty good indicators by a lot of measures, we are doing quite well, but there is pockets of need. The second is, as we think about United Way, a common thing that I hear in the community is that, well, United Way is really focused more on Marion County. How and why should I become involved if I'm in Hamilton County or any of the other counties for that matter? And then finally, and we call this the boiling the ocean problem, you know, these problems that we have in our community are just too big for United Way to handle. So I want to tackle each of those and then turn it over to Ann to go into more detail. So myth number one, there's no need in Hamilton County. And you know, certainly again, we have good community indicators. I think by any number of metrics you would say we are in pretty good position. However, let's go back to that variance issue. Recall the variance in the income levels. Add on top of that, since about 2008 with the recession, we've seen much more demand and a heightened demand in Hamilton County. And let's look at some of those indicators. 4.5% unemployment in Hamilton County. The Central Indiana Metro is about 5.1%. So again, we're a little bit ahead, but you see again some disparity in those numbers. So Noblesville, 5.3%. Sheridan 4.5 and Arcadia 4.5%. Now, we were just talking before the session that this is an example of where the indicator doesn't tell the whole story, because while the unemployment rate is 4.5%, when you start to dig under that number, what you see is that where we've had job growth, and we hear this in the media, is in a lot of areas where the jobs that are being added don't replace, from an income perspective, the jobs that are being lost. So overall, we may be doing well, but from an overall income perspective, we may be a bit on the decline. Let's look at the number of people who are in poverty or below the poverty line in Hamilton County. Now, in Hamilton County overall, 4.7%. But again, I would draw your attention to the disparity that we see in the community. And certainly in Arcadia and Sheridan, and even in Noblesville, where we are significantly above the norm. Again, in the Indy Metro, that number is about 15.2%. So really, Arcadia and Sheridan, to some extent, are right on par with what we see overall. All this is to say that there is pockets of need in Hamilton County. And again, when I came to the Hamilton County Advisory Board, when I was approached, I was blown away by these numbers because I frankly had no idea. And so that's part of what we want to do this morning, is to build some awareness. Let's dig deeper into poverty. 13,606 people live in poverty in Hamilton County today. Now, while that is troubling, what is even more troubling is the number of children that impacts. About 4,732 kids, 5.6%. Again, in the Indy Metro, we see that being higher, but just the number of children, and when we look at the assistance programs that these people are involved with, overall 2.9% are recipients of either food stamps or SNAP support. 16.6% of Hamilton County kids receive free or reduced lunch. Again, a number that I would have been completely foreign to me before I became more familiar. And then ultimately, we want to look at what has been the rate of change. And so when we look at the Connect to Help data, a United Way agency, we had about 3,600 Hamilton County residents calling in 2013. About another 2,800 searched the online directory. And when we look at the change between 2012 and 13, that number is about 10%. And Demetrius, I believe the overall number for the Metro is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3-4%. So we're outpacing the rate of change. Now, my analysis of that is if we are outpacing the rate of change overall, and we're in a community that has traditionally been seen as being affluent, we may not be well poised to be able to deal with that. So there's clearly need in Hamilton County. So hopefully we've eradicated that myth. When we look at what people are concerned about, interestingly, we don't see much fluctuation over time in what people are calling 211 about. Mostly housing and utilities assistance, and transportation and health and legal. And these are themes that you're going to hear Ann touch on when we talk about the notion of basic needs momentarily. One of the indicators that we look at to look at the health of the community in the long run and the outcome of income opportunities is graduation rates. Again, we're pretty blessed in Hamilton County to have about a 95% graduation rate. This is where we see a great level of consistency, although in the Sheridan community we certainly have some work that we can do. So that was myth number one, that there's no need in Hamilton County. Myth number two is that United Way overall is focused on Marion County. Well, the reality here is that United Way works with all of the counties, including Marion County in our metro, the six county service areas. We have specific programs in Hamilton County that are geared toward our community. We've had a big initiative led by Cindy Benedict and some others in the community on the domestic violence issue, our backpack attack, Read Up tutors, Read Up readers, youth as resources, and really focusing on the notion of quality childcare, which is a major initiative for United Way overall. There are 3 agencies in Hamilton County that are United Way agencies. So Boys and Girls Club of Noblesville, Prime Life Enrichment, and the Children's Theraplay organization serve 7,100 people in our community. Now, outside of that, there are 69 agencies that extend beyond the reach of Hamilton County that are in multiple counties. And within our county alone, about 82,000 people are touched by those programs. So clearly, United Way isn't focused just on Marion County or just on any one specific area. And I would take a step back from a business perspective. I was telling someone earlier before the session, in my role in a software company, we are constantly looking for developers. I had 3 interviews yesterday. I probably have 2 or 3 waiting for me today when I get into the office. And we are constantly looking for talent. We have hired people from Greenfield. We hired a person recently from Shelby County. We are located in Hamilton County, but we draw from all the outlying counties as well. So for my business to be successful, we have to have communities that are healthy overall. And so that's part of the reason. It's not entirely altruistic, but the rising tide raises all ships. And when the community is successful, then my organization and your organization is poised to be more successful. Now, the last one I would call a quasi-myth. And I call it a quasi-myth because there is some truth to it. The issues are too big for United Way to fix alone. United Way, we would agree with this, incidentally. The issues in our community are too big for any one entity to tackle. So what does United Way do? Well, United Way does a number of things. First of all, they are a convener of the government sector, private sector, nonprofit, and in that independent convener kind of fashion can really bring people to the table, and more importantly, through sound research and through having a thumb on the pulse of what's happening in our community, can be an effective leader in helping us to prioritize and address these issues. And so it's this ability to be able to bring people together, to mobilize them on a plan that is focused on sound research, that I think makes United Way certainly an organization that I'm proud to be a part of and proud to be a volunteer of. And I would say, while the problems are large, guess what? We know how to fix them. And I'm going to turn it over to Ann Mertlow, the CEO of United Way, who will share with you our new strategic plan and then take your questions on how we move forward. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. It's my pleasure to be able to address you, to talk to you a little bit about what we're calling the New U, which is United Way's new strategy for community impact. How many of you have had a relationship with United Way in the past? How many of you think you could describe concisely what we do today? This is very common, very, very common, and that's why I really thank you for being here this morning, because I am hopeful that by the time I'm finished, you will be able to talk about what United Way does today. So our vision for the community hasn't changed. Thank you, Mark. We have always had the vision that we want this community, and when we say this community, our 6-county region, to be a place where we're proud of the quality of life for all of our residents. And we know that that's not the case. It's not the case in any of our 6 counties. We still have a lot of work to do in this regard. We are an organization that has always been grassroots. So the power of United Way has always been in what we can do together. So bringing people together, bringing institutions together to create a force for change that is much greater than any of us could ever hope to achieve on our own. We are a strategic organization, and we are focused not just on the provision of services today, but on the provision of those services as a means to an end, where the end is the self-sufficiency for all of our residents to the greatest extent possible for their circumstance. We do that by focusing on 4 areas of priority. Education, because it's the best path out of poverty. There is no doubt about that. Income stability, because we know we have far too many families that are operating on the edge. They are one big financial challenge away from some pretty substantial financial crises. Health, because we know we have unhealthy kids, and some unhealthy kids have trouble learning. Adults with chronic health issues have trouble earning a sustainable income. And basic needs, because quite simply, if you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, you can't even begin to focus on what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone what's going to happen a year from now. These are all highly correlated. We know from the data across central Indiana that we see perfect correlations in every county between education, income, and health. In places where there are high educational attainment levels, there tend to be higher income levels and better health outcomes. And in places where the opposite is true, you see the opposite in all 3. So they really are interconnected, and they need to be considered that way. We think about our work as being along what we call the path to self-sufficiency, where the beginning of this path starts at an individual's birth, and the end is their success as an adult at any age, where success is defined as self-sufficiency. So we know that there are many challenges that people can face on that path. And I think about this as a sidewalk that people need to walk to success. So it needs to be smooth, it needs to be paved. It can't have a whole bunch of sinkholes, where people keep falling off. We also know that there are proven strategies that can be deployed to help people overcome those barriers. So United Way really has 3 unique parts to its value proposition in our community. The first, and this is what most people know, is that we support a strong network of human service agencies, 91 to be exact, in our region, that serve across county borders. We provide them with unrestricted funding, but we align them with our big community goals, and I'll talk about those in a minute, and we hold them to very high standards. And in a case where an organization can't or won't, for whatever reason, after we help them with capacity building, meet our standards, we will separate our relationship with them. And as a result of some of that over the last few years, we've seen a significant number of mergers between organizations. So the need in the community is being met, but through a much stronger and more sustainable organization going forward. So efficient use of resources is very important, not just to our community, but certainly to the people who invest in our community through United Way. The second is that we connect the dots between the work of our agencies and between the work of our agencies and others working in the human services sector, because what we'd like to do is create a deeper relationship with people and give them a critical mass of services at one time to provide a foundation from which they can begin to grow long term. So often in the human services sector, what we'll see are people coming in for a basic need today, and then they'll drop out, and then they'll come back in and they'll drop out, come back in and drop out. If we can have a deeper relationship with people, then we can see what all of their needs are at once, bring together the resources provided by this wonderful human services platform that's been built over the last 100 years, and work in partnership to get them stable so that they can grow long term. And then the third unique part to our value proposition is that we keep a bird's eye view on this entire landscape so that we can identify big gaps and weaknesses, places where no one is really working, and strategically invest community resources in those areas. The best example of that is the work that we've done in childcare recently, and I'll go back to that in a second. But as we thought about what our strategy wanted to be for the coming years, we knew we wanted to set measurable goals. But we didn't want to set goals just at the program level. What we wanted to do was to have our eye on what are the things that have to happen in Central Indiana? What are the things we need to change going forward to make sure that we are a vibrant, healthy, growing community going forward? What are those big community indicators that we need to move long term? And then back into community metrics. How do we measure whether we're moving the needle on those things? And then program metrics. So the more granular investments, how are they rolling up to the community metrics and moving the needle on the high-level issues? And then we wanted to align our work around those issues, really be focused, not be everything to everybody, because we can't possibly be successful if we're everything to everybody. We need to focus within our areas of priority on those big things we want to change. Engage strategic partners around those issues. So there are many organizations in our community that focus on maybe just one of the 4 priority areas that we do. But they're very important in the community. They do very important work, and they're really making a difference. So they're really moving the needle, very effective. We want to partner with those people. And then transparency has always been very important to United Way. So really making sure that we're reporting on our progress. So we know that this works because we started doing it several years ago with quality childcare. So quality childcare was one of those areas. We knew that there was a lot of talk, a lot of energy and interest, and a sense of urgency around improving education in our community. But what we found was that almost all of that effort was on K through 12. And almost no one was working on that 0 to 5 year time frame when 85% of the brain is developing, and where we know that quality stimulation and learning environments are really key to the development of neural connections that make kids lifelong learners. The more we dug into that area, the more we found that we really had a very poor regulatory construct in Indiana too, and that the money that was being spent on early childhood actually was not being spent very well. So our tax dollars that were going into subsidy vouchers for low-income families were, in many, many cases, being used to put kids into substandard facilities that weren't even meeting basic health and safety standards. So that's why you were reading so much over the last couple of years about kids that were literally dying in daycare. We had a real problem. So United Way put a stake in the ground on that space. That's a place where we really identified a big gap in that continuum and said, all right, we want 80% of child cares in Central Indiana, child cares of scale, so we're not talking about in-home centers that have 6 kids or less, but child cares of scale, to be quality. We adopted the state's voluntary rating system called Paths to Quality, which is a 4-level rating system, where levels 3 and 4 are high-quality curriculum, really designed for educational benefit for kids. We know we started at 14%. And through our work, we've been able to move the needle already to 26%. So how did we do that? Well, we aligned our resources around that particular goal and did 3 things that were pretty unique for United Way. The first was that we put in place a public information campaign. And you've probably seen the commercials on TV. How many of you have seen the commercial with the kid who is, it's like a toddler who's in a crib, holding onto the railing, sitting in front of a TV with just fuzz on the TV? If you weren't looking at that at the very end of the commercial, you would not know that that was a United Way commercial, but it is. And it is really designed to educate parents that all daycares in Central Indiana are not created equal, that there is a difference between a daycare of quality, and an early learning center designed to get your kid ready for kindergarten. So we wanted to, number one, make parents aware so that we would drive the demand for high quality care, and to give them a resource so that they could actually find where high quality daycares are. So we know that's working. Our agencies that actually take care of kids are telling us they're seeing many more people come in the door because they are asking hard questions. The second thing was we transformed ourselves from an agency or an organization that simply educates legislators on issues facing our community to one that advocates for very specific solutions. And this past year we went to the legislature, and House Bill 1036, which I'm glad to say passed, was known at the legislature as the United Way bill. That bill now requires public dollars to be used in daycares that meet basic health and safety standards. We still have a way to go to get them to the higher quality levels 3 and 4 centers, but we are making great progress on that. That will touch 20,000 kids across Indiana. So that's a really great way that we can even expand our impact. And then the third is that in order to get on paths to quality, to meet that first level where you're meeting basic health and safety standards, organizations have to meet specific physical requirement standards. So things like having the appropriate hygiene facilities, having the appropriate fire access to the outside, things like this. That requires money. And so what we did, and we were funded by the Lilly Endowment, which is so generous to so many of us we know, to provide capital grants to organizations, some of which were United Way agencies, but many, many more, the vast majority of which were not United Way agencies. We went out and we found these centers that were working in areas of our community, in all of our counties, and provided 80% of the money they needed to build out the facilities to be on paths to quality. And so that's how we are increasing the number of seats. I talked a little bit before about the power of United Way and bringing people together, the influence that we can have. And so one of the most great examples of that very recently in Marion County was the mayor's proposal to put $25 million of city money into quality childcare. That money would come through United Way of Central Indiana to continue and accelerate our work in creating quality seats, and also to do scholarships for low-income kids to get them into these seats. I want to give you some statistics you may not know about. According to long-term research, at-risk children who don't receive a high-quality early education are 25% more likely to drop out of school, 40% more likely to become a teen parent, 50% more likely to be placed in special education, 60% more likely to never attend college, and 70% more likely to be arrested for a violent crime. Those are staggering statistics. That's why we have to start early. That's why our path to self-sufficiency starts so early. So we know that we can move the needle on that. So as we started to expand our strategy, we said, okay, well, what's next? What's next in education? What's the next big milestone? Well, the next big milestone in a child's educational journey is third grade literacy, because we know up through third grade they are learning to read. Beyond third grade, they are expected to be able to read and comprehend at third grade level in order to be able to learn further. So if they're not reading at grade level by grade 3, they are almost certain to fall further and further behind. We also know that the achievement gap widens over the course of summers for kids who are in low-income situations, just because of the environments that they find themselves in. So we are really focused on literacy, and Mark mentioned Read Up. How many of you are familiar with Read Up? So some, but not all of you. Read Up is our program where we pair volunteers in the community with children who are struggling to read. And we work with the schools, and we bring these tutors in, we do some training for them, and we are really focused on working 50 to 70 hours over the course of an entire school year with these kids, one-on-one, so that we can get them to higher reading proficiency. We have a lot of data on this program now. We have 3-year averages that we're showing that we can substantially improve the proficiency of these children. And this is a great place where we can connect volunteers and create a very meaningful experience for volunteers that changes a child's life. I mean, we know how to read, we take it for granted, and this is a way to truly change a child's life in a very, very meaningful way. So we know that these kids, if we can get 50 to 70 hours in the classroom over the course of an entire school year, that we can get them reading on average 40% higher. They'll score 40% higher on their tests than they would have otherwise. So great program there. And then because we know that creating tens of thousands of really great third grade readers does not necessarily ensure that they go on to be self-sufficient adults, we have to also be focused on the end of that K through 12 continuum. We need kids to be graduating from high school. We need them to be graduating with a high school diploma. That means they have the skills necessary to pursue some post-secondary work. We have some real issues in this regard now. because the folks at Ivy Tech, for example, would tell you that 30% of the people that register for their classes require extensive remediation before they can actually make further progress. And that's an employability issue. So these are our education goals. Right now, these numbers are, we're at 26% against the 80% in quality childcare. We're at 84% against the 90% in early literacy. We're actually, believe it or not, in central Indiana at 89% on a high school graduation rate. We have some quality issues in there, but we have wide disparities across our counties. So Mark showed you some statistics that generally in Hamilton County are higher than this, but there are pockets that have significant challenges. In order to get to 90%, exceed 90%, or even maintain 90%, we have to be focused on the places that have challenges, and including those places in Hamilton County where we have increasing pockets of poverty. They will continue to challenge the Hamilton County and the Central Indiana statistics as a whole. And we're seeing that across our counties as well, which is why we do our programming across all of our area. So that's the first part of our path to self-sufficiency, which is education. Education is a strategy in and of itself, but it is also the long-term income strategy. On income, today, one of the things we're really focused on is reducing the percentage of financially unstable families in Central Indiana. We know that number's been going up. It's at about 32% now. We define that as the families that are spending more than 30% of their monthly income on housing plus utilities. These are families that typically have trouble saving. And so imagine a situation where you have a family that has a car, a single car, but has not been able to save. And the car breaks down and needs a big repair, and you don't have the savings to repair the car. It's your only way to work. Pretty soon you are unemployed, and very soon after that you are homeless. So we have families that are, they look outwardly stable today, but just a few challenges could really put them in a terrible situation. So for the first time this year, United Way of Central Indiana did a strategic allocation of funds to fund an income strategy. And the cornerstone of that strategy is something called the Centers for Working Families. How many of you have heard of that? A few, okay. The Center for Working Families is a model that was originally funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. The Annie E. Casey Foundation is a very big, famous national foundation that is one of the few that really does long-term funding. They will fund programs for 10 years, but they're very data-driven. They want to know that these programs are working. Center for Working Families has been incubating in Central Indiana for the last 6 years. It was brought here by Central Indiana Community Foundation, and has been, which has been a partner with LISC as well. So we have about 6 years of data in our own community about how this works, and it is working. It is a case management approach to family success. So these are striving families who will typically come into a community center or a place like that, a place that is a front line for receiving people in need. And the coaches, the 3 professional coaches that work with participants, develop a deep relationship. So we talked about the deep relationship, understanding the whole of a family's challenges. That's what this group does. They understand not just that the car broke down and I don't have $500 to fix that car, but it's my only mode of transportation. I'm not on a bus line. I am going to have trouble at work, and I'm going to lose my house shortly thereafter. And oh, by the way, I have 3 kids. So these 3 coaches work with these families over a period of several years. And they do 3 things, 3 very important things. The first is immediate income support that the family might be entitled to. So help them get that, get stabilized. The second is employment counseling. So how do we get you reemployed if you're already unemployed? How do we get you employed at a higher wage if you're really not employed at a livable wage? How do we figure out how to get you the certifications you need to be employable at a higher wage? And then the third, really important one, is financial literacy skills. So teaching people how to budget. So they understand what their income levels are, what they can afford, why saving is so important, how to manage your credit, how to get out of credit difficulties if you're already in credit difficulties. So it's stabilization, it's increased income, and it's financial literacy skills to help you stay there once you exit the program. This is a really great program. We know it works. We would like it to see it scaled across our area. It's in 8 locations in central Indiana right now, 6 of which are United Way agencies. And so we are really working on that. This is an important activity for our community. In health, we have not unenviable health statistics, right? We know we're 41st out of 50th in the United States for our health statistics in Indiana. You won't see that on any economic development ads. It's just not a good statistic, right? In central Indiana, when we look at this, the county rankings show that we have the first, Hamilton County, first, second, and third, as well as the 25th, 40th, and 78th counties in Indiana. So you might say, okay, well, we've got first, second, and third, and that's good, and that is good in Indiana, but it's still first, second, and third in the 41st state. So we've got room to improve. There are lots of indicators that affect this, and we will be looking at all of them. They include things like the number of people who are smoking, the addictions, the mental health provider ratios. We look at all of those things. We would like to see Central Indiana have much better health statistics. From a long-term perspective, we know we have a real problem with childhood obesity. So we know right now 1 in 3 Hoosier kids is either overweight or obese. We know that in high poverty areas, that approaches 50%. We know that these kids are already suffering health issues, and we know what awaits them as adults because we know how many chronic diseases, diabetes, cancer, are essentially caused in large part by obesity. So we are adopting the goals of a collective impact initiative called Jump In for Healthy Kids. Jump In for Healthy Kids is a partnership, and we are one partner in this effort. It includes the regional hospital CEOs, the CEOs of Lilly, Roche, and WellPoint, and the major funders, now the major sports organizations, and many others coming together to figure out exactly where we stand, and then to use the 2 years of research that we performed on programs around the nation that are really working, really moving the needle on childhood obesity so that we can bring those best practices and create a custom plan for Central Indiana. They include everything from a big public information campaign that you might expect to training clinicians to have culturally sensitive conversations with parents and kids about weight. It's not happening in large part today. To dealing with issues of food deserts, because not everyone lives in a neighborhood or has transportation to a place or can afford healthy foods or even knows what to do with them. There are places in our city where we have food deserts. There are places in every one of our counties where we have food deserts, where it's just not accessible. And then, another piece of this is being able to give kids the same kind of tools that we as adults have through wellness programs to better our situation. So we know how many of you are in some sort of wellness program? Okay, so in a wellness program, typically what we do is we go and we get weighed, it's unpleasant, right? We get weighed and our height, and they calculate our BMI, and we figure out where we stand relative to healthy indicators. Kids don't have anything like that. So there is now a tool that is being used in a number of different places. The Hamilton Southeastern schools actually are using this tool right now. It's called FitnessGram. It is a web-based tool, and it is used to do fitness analyses through PE classes or through volunteers for these kids so that they can see where they stand, and it will be a tool that they will be able to keep throughout their school experience. We are working with the state to get it instituted statewide, and then it won't matter where kids move within Indiana, they'll still have that tool. It's non-competitive. It's replacing, in many ways, the President's Physical Fitness Test. Does anybody remember that? The President's Physical Fitness thing where you had in 6th grade to do the chin-up? Yeah, I'm still scarred. I couldn't do it, right? So really, really good stuff here. We are the fiscal agent for Jump In for Healthy Kids. The team that is working on this, that is dedicated to Jump In, sits in our office. And we have 91 agencies that will be able to adopt the best practices of Jump In for Healthy Kids, because they touch families and kids every day. And a big part of this will be changing the culture of our community. So really interesting things going on. On basic needs, Mark talked about 211. Does everybody know what 211 is? Anybody doesn't know? Please raise your hand if you don't know, because it's really important for everybody to know. Okay. Well, 211, you might not know, started within our United Way. Our 211 started within United Way, and we spun it off about 15 years ago. And it's now a United Way agency, and we fund them at the rate of about 40% of their operating budget, which is more than we do for any other agency. We've made an exception for them because it is such an important infrastructure organization. It is really an important part of connecting the dots on that path to self-sufficiency. We also get incredible data from them. It's real-time data. We know where the calls are coming in from. We know whether they're going up or down, and we know what support people are asking for. And Mark showed that overlaying bubble graph earlier that talked about the needs. A lot of it is housing. A lot of it is food. A lot of it is shelter of some sort. Domestic violence is one of those. And utility assistance is another one of those too. So these field calls from all over the place. And we are pretty much maxed out on what we can do with 211. 211s exist around the nation. Many of them get some public funding. Ours gets no public funding. It is really supported primarily through philanthropic dollars, United Way and some other private funders. We need to get some public funding for this, and it is at the top of our list for our public policy agenda this coming year, to get some public funding, because a lot of people do not know what 211 is. And it is not advertised. And the reason it is not advertised is because we can't take any more calls. We don't have the capacity to expand any further. So we really need this. This saves government a lot of money. Government refers a lot of people into this. And so we're working with the state to figure out how we would get this done. But this is a very important piece. The other thing we're doing, and this is limited to Marion County at this point, is that for the first time, the state of Indiana bid out the administration of the Energy Assistance Program. So the Energy Assistance Program is a federal program that brings dollars into the state that are then distributed, administered by different organizations across different counties in the state. This year, the state asked for proposals, and energy assistance typically goes to families at 150% of the poverty level or below. So it's a population we care a lot about. We put in a proposal to the state in conjunction with 211 and the Bonner Center, which is one of our community centers that has some experience in this, bringing all of our experience together, and the state accepted our proposal. So we will be administering $13 to $17 million of aid to those families in Marion County that we will now have information on, so we can deliberately and intentionally refer them elsewhere into our network as well. If that all works well, and it's going well so far, we'll see if that leads to something more. But it's I use that as an example because it is a great example of how we leverage existing infrastructure to get greater benefit, which is really important for our community. You know, we really do need to leverage the things that we have in place. It's the reason we can't have 91. It wouldn't make any sense for us to have 91 agencies in every county, any more than it would make sense for us to have, 2 stadiums, or 2 field houses, or 2 airports. I mean, we're just not a big enough community to support that. So we have a big reach, a huge reach, really, and we are affecting a lot of people in these 4 areas through our individual programming, much more significantly through the work of our 91 agencies, and then even more significantly when we're successful in the public policy arena, we can touch many, many more people. We do it together. It's all about togetherness. Our revenue last year was $74 million. That includes what we raise in our traditional campaigns, but also money that we get from foundations. We have excellent relationships with foundations. And we also have an endowment. So the proceeds of our endowment go to offset some of our administrative costs. United Way is one of the most efficient organizations out there. 17,000 volunteers, 90-member board of directors. So people ask me what the biggest change is from the private sector. That's it. For those of you that don't know, I came out of the private sector. I was the CEO of Indianapolis Power and Light for 10 years before I decided to go into the nonprofit sector. And so that's a big change. 91 agencies and just lots and lots of partnerships. Lots of opportunities to engage. So volunteering, advocating, and giving, and doing all three is really important. So as we have become much more active in the public policy arena, we have been leveraging the substantial network, not just of companies, but of individuals who care about specific issues to come together and to help us educate legislators on issues. So we had a large group of people who have been advocating for the quality child care activities, and that's really important. And 211 will be a big part of that too, so we'll be letting you know about that as well. And then, of course, we have to have funds in order to do our work. We have prepared a video to help educate people on what we're doing today, and I'd like to show it to you. It's 90 seconds.
From a child's first breath to an unemployed father's sigh of relief, United Way of Central Indiana is working to help all residents achieve and maintain self-sufficiency. We each have our own unique path to self-sufficiency, often encountering barriers along the way that can stop us in our tracks. United Way is intentionally positioned to take a 30,000-foot view of the community, where we can identify the gaps that separate families and individuals from key qualities of life, and connect them to critical services they need to thrive. How do we do it? From 30,000 feet to feet on the ground, we partner with businesses, a network of agencies, and compassionate people like you to improve the lives of our neighbors who have reached barriers along their paths. We believe the interconnections between 4 key areas of community impact create a bold, successful Central Indiana. Imagine a place where our children flourish, from high-quality early learning through a turning of the tassel ceremony, where active minds keep pace with healthy, nourished bodies, and families thrive from abundant employment opportunities and support in times of unforeseen need. At United Way, it's our vision that all our residents achieve and maintain self-sufficiency. Join us as we help those in need stop needing help.
So, my experts in marketing tell me that that is 3 to 6 times longer than anyone would have the attention span for on TV. So you won't see it on TV. But do you think it does a good job of representing what I talked to you about? I would love to be able to send you a link to this website and ask for your help in spreading the word through your networks. There are so many people who do not know United Way today. They don't know about our new strategy. And they really, this organization has been evolving like any successful organization evolves over time. And so it's important for people to know what we're doing today and that we really are moving the needle. And I think this goes a long way to educating people in a new way about us. So would appreciate it if you would send it out to friends and family, just so they know what we're doing. With that, Mark and I will take questions. Did anybody learn something new? Yes, good, good. Yes.
You know, the data, I think, showed very well that affordable housing is a huge need in this county. And I live in Noblesville. I see it all the time. But there's a bias against really any new construction of subsidized housing. In fact, our mayor went on record saying that. In some ways, that's great for my property value, that those stands are taken. On the other hand, it's really ignoring a huge need. And I'm wondering, how do we work together to deal with issues of that type, particularly since it's well documented?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma, really, and it is a particular dilemma in affluent communities, right? The community development experts will tell you that to have a healthy community long term, you have to have mixed income neighborhoods. This really falls into the community development realm, which we typically don't lead, but we participate actively in. Neighborhood-based strategies are really important as well. So we will continue to talk about that. When we talk about housing and shelter, in our context, we're typically talking not about long-term housing, but about emergency shelter. But we are always part of those long-term planning efforts. Yes.
I have a question for Mark.
Uh-huh.
Mark, why was Sister Road not included in the different county study in Hamilton County? Any particular reason? Sure.
I'm going to defer to Demetrius.
I think we just looked at population sizes and which ones could be fit easily on the slide to talk about.
Okay.
No bias or serpentine plan, it was just, we picked the larger ones.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, as a representative of a community development corporation
Uh-huh.
that serves Hamilton County, area community development, I just wanted to raise awareness, and I had the same question you did about the value that affordable housing has at cross-cutting all of your measures regarding the cost burden and that housing and utilities were the two greatest unmet needs.
Right.
It's particularly here. I was hoping we could talk more about different approaches United Way might consider in addressing affordable housing.
Yeah. Well, we would work with experts like you in making it happen, right? Yeah. We're not community development experts, I would say, but we are great partners in those efforts. And I'd be interested in knowing from you, are you doing countywide or is this citywide
Yeah.
community development efforts that are going on right now, and are they coordinated?
We're working on community-based. We did a housing needs assessment last year that focused in on each community and their particular interests and needs. And I think it was important to highlight, a lot of people consider the needs being largely north of 146th Street. But if you look at the sheer numbers of people living in poverty or seniors aging, the wave is coming that will affect the southern half of the county and the core cities. So we're looking for opportunities to partner and gain credibility and awareness in each of those communities as well as the county as a whole.
Okay.
So we welcome partnership.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we're starting to see some real movement in central Indiana on community regional economic development strategies, which I think are really important for us too. Yeah, and transportation, another huge issue, right? It's a huge issue for all of our counties, so it's one of our public policy agenda items as well. Thank you. I'll get your card.
Can you speak more to the discrepancy between what 211 capacity where that currently lies and the vision you have for it?
Well, I have a vision for connecting the dots that includes 211 and includes more than 211 as well. But in 211, we would like to be able to really put 211 out there to let everybody who's in need know that 211 is an important activity, to coordinate with state and local governments more substantially so that it's used as a resource for connecting with organizations that have capacity. When we look at capacity right now, we look at the number of abandoned calls. So if you're familiar with call centers, right, it's one of the key metrics. How long does it take you? Average speed of answer, right? How long does it take you to get to a call? How many calls get abandoned, so people just essentially don't get connected because they waited too long, they just give up. And then also the third thing is how many unmet needs there actually are. So how many people call in and there really isn't something that we can connect them to. So all three of those things. I'd like to be able to see 211 used by everyone who is a first line receiver of people in need, so that we can develop this deeper relationship. So, somebody comes in for a hunger issue, right? Let's have a conversation. Let's find out a little bit more about their situation, because maybe it's not just a hunger issue. Maybe it's a housing issue, right? Maybe it's an affordable housing issue. And then be able to deliberately refer into other programs and to other agencies, and to be used even to a greater extent by our own agencies to provide immediate connections to people that walk in the door and need services that particular agency doesn't deal with. But in a call center, it's all about volumes, right? It's about volumes and quality. We have the technology to have quality, right? It's run. Our 211 is a very good organization. We just don't have the expansion capability at this point to put more callers or more call takers out there to do this. And it is an incredible way to leverage everything that we do. It's really important. Thanks for your question. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
When you say you don't have the capability to expand,
Mm-hmm.
technology, facility for to have people, and what would it take to get the 211 more enhanced so that it can get out to more people?
Well, it takes money just to build it out, to essentially hire more people, more call takers. This is a population that really lends itself to personal conversations as opposed to a voice system that we see in many call centers today. And you can do some of that, but I mean, these are people who are calling for 911-like services in human services. So it's about money. So we are going to be, I don't want to put a number out there yet because we're still developing our legislative strategy, but it's not huge. When you look at the situation that the state has from a fiscal situation right now, we're not looking for a lot of money. It could make a big difference. We'll keep you informed. We'd love to have you advocate for it when the time comes. Other questions? All right. Ann, is Ann still here? Do you want to make any closing comments?
No, just we appreciate everyone coming out. Hopefully you found this beneficial, and we'll probably be out in the lobby for a little bit if you have additional questions. So.